It's a Friday night in Regina, and a group of women is meeting for the first time.
Nice to meet you. And what's your name? I'm Lisa. Hi, I'm Debbie.
There's a social worker, a business owner, an administrative assistant, and a couple of stay-at-home moms.
7 years ago today is when I got Essure implanted.
Today?
Yep, today.
Wow.
Yeah, 7 years ago.
Different women with different lives. What they have in common is a birth control device they were told was going to make their lives better.
So when I had gone to the OB that my doctor referred me to, and he told me about Essure, it's amazing, it's wonderful. When I looked it up, I didn't find anything bad.
Like it was being pushed as, no, it's like non-surgical, it's
Right,
the
exactly.
safest, it's
Exactly.
the best. We decided to go this way because it was promoted as safe.
Yes,
right?
and you could
No
go back to your
complications.
regular activities as
the next
soon as
day.
you were
Oh,
done.
yeah, exactly.
Essure, or Essure, hit the Canadian market 16 years ago.
In the past, what I've used for birth control were birth control pills, which just wasn't working out for me.
It was promoted as revolutionary.
I could do it in the doctor's office. I didn't have to go to the hospital.
Until then, women wanting permanent contraception really had only one choice: having their fallopian tubes tied, surgery. Essure was so much easier. 2 little coils inserted into the tubes would create scar tissue, making pregnancy all but impossible.
You're going to see it come out. It looks large, but it's not. It's about 2 centimeters long.
Best of all, it could all be done in a doctor's office in minutes.
The device going in, it's covered, and you're going to see it open. And
There
then
it goes.
that's the part of the coil that will stent, and that's about how long it took.
Regina obstetrician and gynecologist John Teal was one of the first in Canada to adopt Essure, extolling it in this 2007 CBC News story.
It's safer, it's more reliable, there are fewer failures associated with it.
Teal knew about tubal ligation failures. He'd heard of this woman who almost died when her ligation surgery left her with a punctured bowel.
And during the resuscitation, from some of the complications, she ended up with bilateral amputations of her hands, her feet, and significant cognitive impairment, so she now lives in assisted care.
Did that case have a bearing on your enthusiasm for Essure as an alternative?
It did. I think it just put a very human face on the reasons that I thought, that reason for surgical risk, that I thought that Essure was important. So we're going to do hysteroscopy today.
In the years since, Teal's enthusiasm has only grown. He's trained doctors on how to implant the device. He advises the company that makes it. Of the estimated 10,000 Canadian women who opted for Essure, the Regina Women's Centre has implanted over 3,000 of them. Teal himself has done 2,000 procedures, including Tricia Travis's.
And I had already talked to my doctor, and she had told me about this amazing new, you're going to be in and out of the office, and you won't miss work, and it's quick, painless, and it'll be great. So I said, yep, sign me up for it.
That was 5 years ago. Tricia, a healthcare worker, and her husband had decided they were done having kids. And so she took her doctor's referral to Teal's clinic.
When the first one went in, I felt it, but it wasn't actually that bad. When the second one went in, it was like excruciating pain, burning all the way up inside of me. And I've been told when I came home there'd be nothing. I left there with cramping, like the worst cramping I've ever had.
It got worse. Her back started aching, her head. Bloating caused her waist to grow 10 inches. The bleeding was immediate, including clots.
My worst one was I was at work working a 12-hour shift, and I work in a nursing home, and I was walking through the dining room, and I felt something, and a clot the size of a baseball fell out near one of the residents' tables in the dining room.
Oh my gosh.
And the clots were like that all the time, and the bleeding was like that constantly. You're good.
Tricia didn't immediately associate her symptoms with the Essure coils. Neither did her doctors. For 2 years, she tried to find answers, but no one, it seemed, could help, beyond pointing out she's a woman. A lot of these symptoms that you've described are not so unusual and are associated often with menstrual cycles and pain and just aging, right?
Right. And I got a lot of that. I got, oh, it's normal and this can happen. And they'd send me on to another doctor, and no one really had any answers ever for me.
When a patient returned to our office with concerns after an Essure placement, we didn't immediately assume that that Essure was the cause.
Why not?
Well, that's much like saying I got a flu shot, I got sick a week later, and it was my flu shot that caused it. Probably not.
It's like I have 2 screwdrivers drilling me in the sides of my hips. It's like, or somebody just took a knife and pushed it and twisted it. You'll be fine if you...
It was a different doctor who inserted Carrie Ponace's Essure coils in 2012. She wasn't sure she was finished having children. She was looking for birth control. Even though Essure is designed to be permanent, it's what her doctor recommended.
I didn't want a permanent, like, I was still pondering on having another little boy because I have 3 girls, right? I wasn't looking for something to be there forever.
6 months after the coils went in, she says the pain began in earnest.
You know, it got to the point where I was stuck either on the couch or in fetal position in my bed.
When she went back to her doctor, he made it clear he didn't believe her.
So it's all probably in your head, you know.
Did he said that? It's in your head?
Yeah, like he said that it's all in my head that I'm thinking that there's pain there when there shouldn't be because the coils were in place. I mean, I was flabbergasted. I had no words because I was like, are you kidding me? So I'm somehow feeling all this pain only up here.
Carrie knew her pain was real, but it wasn't until she turned to Dr. Google that she realized she wasn't alone. A decade after Essure hit the market, the internet was rife with stories of women claiming they had been harmed too. There were Facebook groups from countries around the world.
I will fight tooth and nail for all the ladies in the United Kingdom, worldwide, until this product is removed.
And I was amazed at the amount of women who are experiencing the same symptoms that I am.
I just pray that somebody hears us.
Hearing other women's experiences convinced Carrie she wanted the coils out, and eventually she found a surgeon willing to do it.
And he said, okay, this is what we'll do. We'll just take the coils. Your tubes only. Everything else will stay in there. Lo and behold, for a few days I was sore, I was in pain. But after that, it was like I could get up and move. I can walk.
But it wasn't long before she was bleeding again. It was Carrie's new Facebook friends who counseled her to ask for her pelvis to be x-rayed.
I actually went to look at it and I saw little tiny bright white light. And I was like, what is that? And he told me he found a 1 millimeter particle in there. And
particle of?
Metal left from the Essure. I don't know how they left that part in there. But there is metal inside me still. And my pain is getting worse again. But now I feel like I'm getting literally sliced up inside when I get up and I sit down and when I'm moving around.
Like Carrie, Tricia Travis had come to rely on Facebook for information too.
There was a lot of women I was talking to them, and I was told, they told me don't go get an ablation, but at this point I was like, there's got to be something that will help.
Travis hoped an ablation, removing the lining of her uterus, would stop the bleeding. It was when she was filling out the paperwork for the procedure that she made a startling discovery too.
It was written on one of the sheets when I went in for the ablation. It said that my uterus was punctured at Essure.
So this had been in your records all this time that you were having these symptoms and this bleeding and all this pain.
Yeah.
Right there in your records it said that the doctor knew there was a puncture.
Yes.
But had not told you?
No, no one told me.
Why, do you think?
I don't know. I have no idea.
she came across this is part of her medical records, in which
we showed Dr. Teal the document Travis gave us.
She said she was never told that her uterus had been perforated, and so I just wanted to.
I wouldn't comment on a patient without a written consent, and it would be entirely inappropriate.
Teal did offer to speak to Travis directly, and he did acknowledge mistakes happen, even to experienced practitioners.
I mean, I had cases that were perforated, right? I mean, as I said before, I wish I was infallible. But the thing about complications is we always need to learn from them. And we need to be strong enough individuals to share that with our colleagues. Because when we try and hide things, you end up with things being hidden or things not benefiting anyone.
Indeed, but that would take doctors willing to report complications and a regulator prepared to make that information public. As you'll see, that regulator was not Health Canada, even though it was the agency that approved Essure for sale.
I don't know why they thought putting something in your body that causes inflammation would be a good idea, and leaving it in your body forever.
Worldwide, more than 1 million women have been implanted with these little coils, a birth control device called Essure. But tens, possibly hundreds of thousands of women claim the device caused them harm, including these women, members of a support group in Regina.
You know what? There were times when the pain was so bad, I literally laid there and prayed to die.
When she had her x-ray done, she had 6 coils in her. What? Really? 6. Yeah. The doctors just keep saying it's in your head. It's not all in your head.
Among the many questions they have is how the device, designed to be permanent, got approved in the first place.
I don't know why they thought putting something in your body that causes inflammation would be a good idea, and leaving it in your body forever.
How Essure got licensed in this country is not information Health Canada is willing to share. Fortunately, the United States is not nearly so secretive. In 2002, a panel of the U.S. Food and Drug Administration spent a day hearing evidence from the small U.S. company that invented Essure.
97% of women were ultimately able to rely on Essure as their sole method of contraception.
According to the company, the coils did stop women from getting pregnant and did not seem to cause complications based on early trials. But how comprehensive were those clinical trials? In 2015, Dr. Sankadruva of the University of California re-examined the Essure data and published his findings in the New England Journal of Medicine.
In general, we found that the approval of the device was based on evidence that may have been incomplete and lacked complete follow-up of women who had been implanted with the device.
The company had followed fewer than 1,000 women, most of them for less than 2 years.
Now remember, we're talking about a device that's implanted in women for the remainder of their lifetime.
Yeah.
Certainly, it's unreasonable to expect that we would have decades of follow-up for women at the time at which we approved the device. That's not feasible.
But 2 years?
But 2 years and a small number of women at 2 years, it makes me wonder if we could have had a little bit longer follow-up or a larger number of women.
Of course the company could have, but no one was forcing them to. If Essure had been a drug, regulators in both the U.S. and Canada would have demanded more rigorous testing. Rules for medical devices are different. The lack of long-term data did concern some panel members.
At least get information for the first 4 or 5 years that you've got these devices out there and you're working with them so that you know that they're okay, and not wait 25 years to say, hello, we got to bring this back in.
Well, I think we better take a vote on this one.
I vote no.
Yes.
No. Abstain.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. 6 yeses, 2 noes, 1 abstention.
The panel concluded the benefits of the device would likely outweigh the risks. And on that basis, Essure was approved for market.
So back in the early 2000s, the one thing everyone knew about Essure was that no one knew what the long-term risks might be. The company admitted that and promised to continue its trials. But there was another safeguard built into the system, something designed to catch problems if and when they happened. It was called adverse reaction reporting. Both the FDA and Health Canada have registries where anyone can report complications with a medical device. In the US, that information is public, but in Canada, adverse reaction data is secret. For 2 years, the CBC tried to get data for medical devices, including Essure. When we finally succeeded, we were shocked. According to Health Canada, in the decade after Essure was licensed, the number of adverse reaction reports was exactly 1.
As far as I know, we never submitted anything to Health Canada on any adverse event.
Why not?
It was never a requirement. There was never a reason to.
Regina's Dr. John Teal is right. Only device manufacturers are mandated to report adverse reactions. But how do companies know of problems if doctors don't tell? And what stops doctors from reporting to Health Canada themselves?
You know, you got 26 things pulling you 37 ways, and it never really rises, I guess, to the top of the list of things that we're doing. It's right or wrong. It's the way it is.
I'm just shocked that for a device that was acknowledged at the time, we don't know what the long-term implications are of implanting this in women. Right. That there was a system in place that could have monitored and recorded adverse events, and nobody seems to have participated in it. Does that not strike you as a bit strange?
I think we would be at exactly the same place we are right now. I don't know that.
But you don't know. That's the point. You don't know until you.
The women who had problems they did find a place where they were able to express their concerns.
On social media.
On social media. Yeah.
As the years ticked by and sales of Essure racked up, more and more women were speaking out.
The fatigue is debilitating. Got hit with such bad stabbing pains yesterday.
How long do we humans have to suffer before the doctors will listen to us?
One U.S. site grew to more than 40,000 members.
And then you look at the Essure site and everybody's having joint issues, and it's like, well...
Lone Voices had become a sisterhood.
While I had Essure, I actually got HS disease as well, and it's linked to autoimmune diseases. Oh. So I'm still in pain.
In addition to pain and bleeding, women shared stories about what seemed like allergic reactions.
95% of my airway was closed. The doctor told me I'm lucky I didn't die during my sleep.
I did tell the doctor I was allergic to this. I had the test done, and I still got it done. And yeah, and with my procedure, it was a nightmare.
The Essure coils are made of plastic fibers and metal, including small amounts of nickel. In its product literature, under the heading Contraindications, the company lists hypersensitivity to nickel as a reason not to use Essure.
I was not aware that there was any nickel in it at all until 4 years after the procedure.
Lorna Coyne of Estevan, Saskatchewan, says she's always been sensitive to metals. If anyone had told her about nickel before she was implanted, she would have asked questions.
I would have requested to have an allergy test done just to be sure that I wasn't allergic to it.
Right. But that didn't happen because nobody raised it with you.
No, I had no idea.
Lorna's Essure experience ended in a hysterectomy, the removal of not only the coils, but her entire uterus.
How did you feel about that?
It was a tough one. Having made the choice to have permanent birth control is one thing. Having to remove my parts that make me a woman was hard. It was very hard.
For today's agenda, the panel will discuss the risks and benefits of Bayer Healthcare's Essure system.
By 2015, so many women were reporting problems with Essure, the FDA felt compelled to take a second look.
After an internal exam where I convulsed off the table in pain, he agreed that they needed to come out right away.
The testimony was angry and emotional.
I had the most horrific experience with Essure. I had the coils removed during a surgery I was terrified to have. But now I'm living instead of existing. You all can call it what you want, but we call it Essure.
But in the end, regulators in both the U.S. and Canada kept Essure on the market, albeit with a new warning and a 21-page information brochure doctors were now required to review with their patients before implanting the coils. But by then, hundreds of thousands of women had the coils. Tens of thousands were reporting problems. The cost of approving a device without long-term study or follow-up seemed to be coming clear.
We are their long-term studies. Every woman that has had to deal with this.
How do you feel about that?
It really would have been nice to know that I was a guinea pig. My choices would have probably been a lot different.
Others are going through what you're going through. There's
Not
light
alone.
at the end of the tunnel. That you're not crazy. It's not in your head.
Of the 10,000 Canadian women implanted with the permanent birth control device Essure, more than 3,000, or almost a third, are in Saskatchewan. Many of them patients of Dr. John Teal. When women started coming back to you, did it shake your confidence at all in the device?
No, because there were still so many women who were doing well with the procedure.
Teal believes social media has exaggerated concerns about Essure. His experience convinces him the device remains safe.
The problem with statistics in medicine is, if I say there were 1 million Essures placed and there were 10,000 women who had pain or had problems after, it sounds heartless, because every one of those 10,000 people in that group that you say, well, that's insignificant, every one of those people is a woman. Every one of those people is someone who has a family, has work, whose life has been affected by their pain. But when we look at the converse and we look at the 990,000 or whatever it is who had successful Essure and had reliable, safe contraception without using hormones, who weren't exposed to the risks of bowel injuries, that starts to mitigate things.
That's the position many doctors have taken.
Let's just head to that first room on the left.
But in a suburb of Chicago, this doctor has become an ally.
Maybe sit over here.
To women who are convinced that Essure is the cause of their problems. Do you think, in retrospect, knowing what the FDA knew at the time about this device, do you think it should have been approved?
Yes, a tough question to answer. Personally, I don't think it should have been approved because of what I'm seeing happening now.
Dr. Brett Cassidy started out a believer, too. He implanted dozens of women with Essure coils.
When you had the Essure coils in place, what were some of the things that bothered you?
Pelvic pain, heavy bleeding.
Today, he takes them out.
You know, the first patient, it's always hard to believe, is that just one isolated case. But when I saw time and time again, coils came out and these strange symptoms went away, that's when I realized there's something, a major problem that could be happening. So what we're working on is trying to compare what patients' symptoms were, and this is just a sample.
Cassidy is now conducting his own Essure study. He's surveyed every woman he's removed the coils from.
And then after removal, she's down to 0. She still has a 3 for joint pain.
Comparing their systems with the coils and how they feel once they're out.
And now her quality of life is 4.5. It's like night and day. Patients get their lives back. And it makes patients reassured that they weren't crazy.
But Cassidy is the first to point out that removing the Essure coils isn't easy.
The coils themselves are very fragile, and what I realized from trying to take them out and cut the tubes open and pull out these coils is that little metal fragments were coming off, and I couldn't see in the muscle part of the uterus as to what fragments were left behind.
Some doctors believe individual coils can be removed successfully, but Cassidy's experience, and he's done more than 170 removals now, convinces him the only safe solution is to remove the entire uterus, a hysterectomy.
I mean, for a woman to have a hysterectomy, that's not only a surgical procedure, it's also an emotional procedure.
Very emotional.
And when you think about it, you know, this is the end result of a procedure that was supposed to spare them all of that.
I know,
right?
That's the crazy part. You're trying to not have a surgery to have your tubes tied, and now you're going through a major surgery.
She wants the applesauce.
Back in Regina, Carrie Paunes is now on a hysterectomy wait list. Efforts to take her coils out left her with a piece of metal embedded in her uterus. When she started this journey, she was unsure whether she wanted more children. That decision has now been made for her.
I feel like I'm gonna lose my soul. I've been having nightmares about it. I feel like my womanhood has literally been ripped away. I'm still very young. This stuff shouldn't have to happen. All because I wanted a birth control.
April, nice to meet you. Hi, Carrie. Nice to meet you. Is this your daughter?
Like so many who found themselves part of the Essure saga, Carrie finds comfort in women who've had similar experiences. Tonight, she shares the news of the planned surgery.
I said, these things are causing me pain. So I went through all the processes. I signed all the paperwork to get it done. So now I'm waiting for that phone call to whenever I'm gonna get it.
So you're, okay, good.
But that in itself terrifies me, so.
You're gonna feel so much better after. After the surgery in the hospital, I still felt better than before I went in. And I had surgery.
How sad is that?
Exactly, how sad is that? That you feel better having had stuff cut open and pulled out, but you still feel better.
Today, more than 20,000 women in both the U.S. and Canada have joined lawsuits against the makers of Essure. They are women who believed in their doctors, their government, and the promise of the device itself, and who aren't yet ready to let this go.
Everybody smile.
Now, last year, Bayer, the company that now owns Essure, started removing it from the market for business reasons, it says, not safety. On Thursday, there was even bigger news. After a week of reporting by CBC and others, Canada's health minister ordered that regulations around medical devices be strengthened, stronger pre-market studies, as well as improved adverse reaction reporting. In both cases, data to be made public.